a million users. So, Rajan, the stage is yours.
All right. Thank you. Is this working? Yeah. Perfect. All right.
You may want to,
Let me put it on here.
just a little louder. And just for the mic. Yeah.
There we go.
The mic is for the camera, and that's for the.
Got it. Okay, this is for the room.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's after lunch, which means I have about 20 minutes before you get tired from lunch. So I'll try and keep this interesting. I'm here to talk about how Dropbox protects our users, how we deliver security at the scale that we're at, which is 500 million users. I'd like to give some context before I get started, though. I'd like to talk about where we started. And like every superhero, every good startup has a good origin story. So our origin story started on a bus in Boston. Our co-founder and now CEO, Drew Houston, got on a bus to New York. And he was working on an education startup at the time. And as he sat down, he realized he had forgotten his USB key, right? And Drew's not the type of person who just sits around for 4 hours. He was kind of upset about this. And on the bus ride down to New York, he ended up writing the first few lines of code that would eventually become Dropbox. We then, in 2007, we launched, in 2008, we launched Dropbox to the public. And we quickly started growing from there. And along the way, we launched a number of other features. We launched an API. We launched Dropbox for Teams. Dropbox for Teams was interesting because we started to see a theme that emerged, a theme that continues today, which is our users keep pulling us into the business. So Teams popped up because we had very, very small businesses buying personal Dropbox accounts, Dropbox Pro, and they wanted a way to just do all of their billing on one credit card. So that was our first entry into business. It's not very exciting. But then you fast forward to 2013, we launched Dropbox Business, we launched Dropbox Enterprise last year, and this year we're launching Dropbox Education. It's targeted at universities like CSU Fullerton. CSU Fullerton actually happens to be a Dropbox customer and has been for some time, and we're very happy to have you guys as one of our customers. So today we have 500 million users. That's a lot of people. And we are in 200,000 businesses around the world, right? All of these people and all these businesses have built 3.3 billion connections. If you want to talk about a social network, right? Dropbox is a social network. We have a lot of collaboration going on between individuals around the world. And those individuals are saving 1.2 billion files to Dropbox every 24 hours. That's a big number, right? That's more than the number of tweets that Twitter has in a day, and we're talking about files, we're not talking about 140 characters of text. And our problems are truly global. We have most of our customers coming to us from outside of the United States, so this isn't just a US specific challenge that we have. Our infrastructure has been built to serve users all over the world. And all of this adds up then to 500 petabytes of data. That's how much, that's the amount of data that's stored with Dropbox today. That's basically 14,000 libraries of Congress, or as I like to call it, a lot of data. It's just a ton, right? I can't even wrap my head around how big that number is. So we've approached security in 3 ways at Dropbox. We've bucketed the problem of security up into 3 different groups. There's our infrastructure security team, and they are responsible for protecting our servers, our networking devices, basically all of the assets that go into running both the network for both Dropbox, the business, as well as Dropbox, the product or the service. Then we have our product security team. Our product security team is responsible for securing our desktop client, our mobile client, our APIs, our web interface, basically all of the ways that any of you would interact with Dropbox is protected by our product security team. And then finally, there's our abuse team, our abuse prevention team. Every cloud service has a challenge around making sure that their service is not abused. So the abuse prevention team focuses on protecting Dropbox users, as well as making sure that Dropbox isn't used to cause harm to others. Before I go further, quick show of hands, how many people in here are Dropbox users today? Okay, you're in good company. Thank you for using Dropbox. So what you're going to learn about today is what happens with your data when you save it with Dropbox, and how we work to protect not just Dropbox the company, but protect each of you as you're using Dropbox. When we think about security, and you think about security engineering, there's two approaches that you can take. There's a slower process, which is you have an overarching security apparatus around every decision being made in the organization. This results in a lot of boxes that need to be checked, right? And that's okay. For some industries, that's okay. It's okay to have a slower process. When I flew down here from San Francisco, and I want to know when I sit down in a seat on an airplane, I want to know that Boeing or whoever made the plane that I'm sitting on, that they had a very long, lengthy, and slow process before they put that plane in the air, right? That's not something you should do quickly, and that's true for a lot of industries. Dropbox, however, is in an industry that needs to move, that does move very quickly, and we need to move very quickly. So the approach we took is we built a culture of security in our company. We have every single employee worrying about security, and that's not an easy thing to do, right? Engineers just want to build stuff. They don't want to stop and have very thoughtful conversations about the security of the features that they're launching. So our security engineering teams use every interaction that they have with our engineers as an opportunity to teach them about security. And over time, what you see is our engineering teams get very, very, very good at security, and the problems that they bring to our security engineering team become much more complex. This is both good and bad for our security engineering teams. It means that they're not having the easy conversations anymore, but it means they have to keep maturing their capabilities so they can answer those very hard and very complex questions. So let's start by diving into what our infrastructure security team does at Dropbox. So like I said earlier, they're responsible for protecting our network, our servers, everything that our service runs on, right? And it's important because to have a secure product, it has to run on secure infrastructure. You cannot have a secure product if your back-end infrastructure was not designed with security in mind. And that means that our infrastructure security team has had to stand up a secure infrastructure that serves over 500 petabytes of data, right? With millions of users updating that data constantly. So we've approached this in four ways. We operate in a zero trust environment. That means we assume, with every decision we make, we assume that an attacker has achieved a position on our network. And so every decision we make is around how do you slow down that attacker, and how do you stop them from moving laterally across your services, right? I'll talk more about some of the ways we do that as we keep talking here, but basically, if we assume that the attacker is not on our network, we're going to make decisions that make it easier to get across our network. And that's going to give someone, if they ever were to get a foothold on our network, it'll make it much easier for them to then move from the position they have and get into any service that they want to. We also operate a services-oriented architecture. This helps us scale our services very quickly as they continue to talk to each other securely. So this is basically abstracting away the idea of a server doing a service. If you need a new service, you can fire it up. If we're at capacity, a new server will come online automatically and the service can run on it. Having a secure infrastructure and being able to scale is important, but making sure your data is available to you is also important. It doesn't help if we've secured your data, but then you go and try and grab it and you can't get access to it. And to solve that problem, we've stood up massively distributed systems. I said earlier that we have 75% of our users coming from outside the United States. That means we have to have an infrastructure that can reach all of them, but it also means we have to have an infrastructure that's resilient, that will not go down. And then the last thing we do, and this is my favorite part of what I do, is we use threat modeling to think like the attackers. We'll sit down and we'll put ourselves in the shoes of someone who would try and attack us. and we'll come up with all of the ways that they would come after us. And very often, because we have inside knowledge of our architecture, the scenarios we come up with are not likely to occur, but we'll take those scenarios and then we'll test ourselves against them. We will try and run those attacks against ourselves and see how far we got, and then put in place mitigating efforts to stop those from being successful attacks. But this is actually not the interesting piece, right? This is all pretty standard stuff when it comes to security. Our challenge is that we have to do this in a way that doesn't slow down Dropbox. And the reason we have to do that is we have 2,000 employees supporting those 500 million users. The employee to user ratio is very, very high. And if we start putting in place security requirements that cause friction, security requirements that slow down our employees, we will stop being able to deliver a good quality service to our users, and our employees will get frustrated and they will start to make mistakes. I'll talk more about that in a couple of slides here. This is how our infrastructure security team sees the world. There's an employee, there is our corporate network, and there's our production network. We then focus on protecting those with authentication, authorization, and we also audit what the employees are doing. So what we've done at Dropbox is we have made sure that if you're an employee, you can get access to our corporate network. That's what you should be doing, but you shouldn't necessarily have access to every service on that network. And this is pretty typical IT operations, right? But what we also do is, just because you have access to our corporate network does not mean you have access to our production network. Our production network houses our users' data. It houses all of your data that you've saved with us. Really, it's just engineers who can get onto our production environment. So if you are attacked as an employee and an attacker achieved a position on our corporate network, they're not going to be able to hop over to our production network. And then within our production network, we've taken further measures to protect our user data. The engineers who have access to our production network do not have access to your user data. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One, your user data is your data. It's private to you. We shouldn't be looking at it, right? But number two, if someone were to get a position on our production network, we don't want them to automatically have access to your user data. So we've built a bunch of gates in to protect against these attackers moving between these different areas of our world. Authentication, authorization, and audit are straightforward concepts. Authentication is you prove who you are. You show us that you are who you say you are. Authorization is then making sure that now that we know who you are, you're only doing what you should be doing on our network. And then audit is where once you're on our network, once you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, we look at the actions every single one of our employees are taking. We record them, we then go back and audit them. We have automated audit controls in place. And we do that because it's not because we don't trust our employees. It's because we want to know if one of our employee accounts gets owned. We want to know that we can find that quickly. Doing that across this entire infrastructure, across our distributed systems, right, is really, really, really hard. Because it's basically looking for a needle in a haystack. So let me start with authentication. I'm going to talk about how we've solved this problem of 2,000 users supporting 500 million, 2,000 employees supporting 500 million users. Beyond a username and password, each employee at Dropbox has to supply a two-factor authentication code every time they move from one service to another. How many people in here are using 2FA anywhere in their lives? All right. We're going to talk more about that in a second. If you're not using 2FA, you should be, but we'll talk about that later on. Now, at Dropbox, 2FA is great. Most people have their 2FA tokens on their phone, right? And pulling out your phone and getting your 2FA token takes a couple of seconds. It can take up to 20 seconds. Some of our engineers have to do that up to four times every 10 minutes. That comes out to 48 minutes, almost an hour of lost productivity a day. And our employees they will not tolerate that, and they'll fight us on that. So what we did was we actually were one of the earlier adopters of the UFA standard. And I have a little YubiKey in my laptop. When it's time for me to 2FA, I tap it, it fills in the code for me automatically, and I'm on my way. we've taken a 20-second interaction and made it a 1 or 2 second interaction for our engineers. And these are the types of decisions that we have to make over and over again as we introduce security controls. We have to maintain a secure network. We cannot compromise on that. But we have to keep our employees moving quickly. On the authorization side, we've introduced, the only way to do this at our scale is to introduce a lot of automation. I've been at Dropbox for a number of years, and I've moved between 4 different roles there. And each time I've moved, the authorizations that I have should change. And the only way to do that at our scale is to have it occur automatically. If I move from one role to another, if I, on my flight home and moved into another role, by the time I land, I will not have access to the services I had access to before. I may have access to some new services, but these old services that I should not have access to, I will not have access to. And so the message there is we've had to be very thoughtful about making sure we are locking down what our users are doing, and making it very quick for those authorizations to change as their role changes. And I talked about audit already. We look at everything our users are doing, and we have automated tools that we use to identify anomalies and users who are behaving in a way that they wouldn't typically behave. We keep profiles on our users. The systems that we use generate profiles as to what typical use should look like for an employee. And if the employee deviates from that, even if they're on systems they're supposed to be on, even if they're working with data they should be working with, if they deviate from normal behavior, we will see it, we will flag it, and we will automatically ask them if they're actually doing what we see them doing. One of the ways we do that is with something called Security Bot. So Slack is pretty popular in corporate environments right now. There's a lot of companies that are using Slack. Is Slack popular in college as well? How many of you are using Slack? Okay, so it's pretty popular here too. All right, so let's say that an employee is working on our network and they start to do something that is atypical. Security Bot will be monitoring for that. Security Bot will see that something atypical is going on, and Security Bot will send a message to that employee and say, hey, is this you? And the employee just has to respond back yes or no. If they respond back yes, we'll still lock it and we'll look into it to understand why the employee's behavior has changed. But if it's not them, then we start to cut off access. We go into a heightened state of response. So and we have hundreds of these going out a day across our infrastructure, and it's really it's given us a high degree of fidelity around users doing things on our network and whether they should be or not. This actually happened to me about a month ago. I was home, it was Friday night, and I was running pen tests against my home network, the penetration tests against my home network. This is what I do on a Friday night now. That's how I have fun. And so I had downloaded a program called Nmap. If any of you are familiar with penetration tests or vulnerability tests, you'll know Nmap. And I took this laptop. I hopped on a MiFi device. So I was on an external network, and I started testing my public IP address on my home network. And sure enough, about 5 minutes later, my Slack on my laptop blew up. My phone's Slack client started blowing up, and it was a security bot checking in with me, saying, "Hey, Rajan, is this you? Are you running Nmap?" And I said, "Yes, this is me." And security bot basically says, "We have detected this application running on this IP address." It just gives me a bunch of information so I can verify that it's me. I said, "Yeah, it's me." And so what happened from there was just because I said yes, it's me, we didn't stop there. About 20 minutes later, the head of our detection and response team, and this is his Friday night as well. He doesn't have a family, so I'm sure he was having much more fun than I was. But I got a call from him, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing? Why are you running Nmap? We see this alert come through. We see that you've confirmed it's you. Why are you running Nmap on Dropbox equipment?" And I explained what I was doing. And he listened very thoughtfully, and he said, "Yeah, no thanks. Please stop. Please stop using Dropbox to penetrate, to pen test your home." So these are the types of interactions that we try and have with employees. These are the types of ways that we try and catch behavior on our infrastructure in a way that doesn't slow down our employees. So next, let's talk about our product security team. You'll remember that our product security team is a team that secures the way you interact with Dropbox. We run a modern service. Right? Dropbox has a web architecture, we have a desktop client that we develop, we have a mobile app that we publish, and we have APIs that enable third-party developers to develop against us, right? We are a platform for a number of vendors, developers. And the job of our product security team is to make sure that what we push out to the world is free from vulnerabilities that could be used to exploit our systems or to use our systems to cause harm to others. So how does the product security team work? Earlier I talked about a culture of security. Our product security team cannot be everywhere. They are not going to sign off on every decision that's being made. But the important thing is that they are where they need to be when they need to be. So this is a typical flow for launching a product or new feature. You have an idea, you design that idea, you start to code that idea, then you test it, you do some QA testing, and then you ship it. At each one of these stages, though, our product security team can be involved. Again, we rely on our engineers to use good judgment, but we don't trust them that they will always do that. We know that there's some education that has to happen. So when there's an idea, if it touches a certain area of our code base, if it's a certain type of feature, or if it's an entirely new product, there will be a ProdSec consult. Engineers will come in, they'll just have a conversation with our product security team. Our product security team will say, hey, this is a great idea, go ahead, or they may say, look, there's some risk here. We're worried about a couple of things. Why don't you get to the design phase and then we'll talk again. We get to the design phase and the engineering team may come back for a design review. Again, ProdSec may say, hey, great, you've dealt with the problems that or the questions that we had, we don't need to talk again. Or they'll say, hey, okay, great, you've designed this the right way, but we really need to see the code that you put in place now. And if that's the case, we'll do a code review. Now, code reviews are not always optional. We have tools in place that monitor certain areas of our code base because we know they are very sensitive. And if we see some development being done around that code base, before it can be pushed to production, from our testing environment to the production environment, a code review from the product security team must happen. And so what they've done there is they've built guardrails, right? They've given the engineers a lot of leeway, but they've given them some guardrails as well to make sure they don't get off the path that they should be on. So there's a console, so reviews, but what's also happening during all three of these phases is it's not just a, hey, can you sign off on this or tell me how to do it session. Our product security engineers actually use those sessions to teach our engineering teams about product security. We want every engineer at Dropbox worrying about this. And like I said earlier, over time we've seen our non-security engineering teams become really good at security engineering. And that's just how we're going to continue approaching security at Dropbox. It has to be everyone's problem. We don't want to have an organization of 2,000 people designing Dropbox and then an organization of 500 people trying to run around after all these engineers at Dropbox, making them do good things when it comes to security. We need our engineers to do good things when it comes to security. So we've done all of this, and now it's time to test. What we start to do here then is we will start to run penetration tests against our solutions, right? So we will hire third-party providers, experts in the field, to come in and run penetration tests against us. And we have internal penetration testers also. We have a red team, that we call it, that will go around, and their job, they're the chaos team. They just show up without telling you and try and break the security on your feature, on your product. And they don't tell you they're doing it either. So we have a team that a few weeks ago, one of the red teams took our, basically worked with our CFO and said, look, we're going to pretend that your laptop is doing something bad because we want to see if our corporate IT team, our corporate security team picks it up. And they did pick it up. They decided to do it on a Friday evening, and it was not good. We keep doing these things on Fridays. We should stop doing that. And it blew up the weekend for a bunch of people. But the good news is the system worked, right? So we will penetration test. We will pen test our own stuff before we ship it to the world. And then once we ship it, we don't stop there either. We've actually launched a bug bounty program. Has anyone here participated in a bug bounty program? Is anyone doing? Okay, great. So if you're interested in security and if you want to start to learn more about security, the easiest way to do that is to go and sign up for a bug bounty program. We're doing it, Google's doing it. I think Apple has an invite-only one, so you might not be able to get into that. I think Facebook has one. All the major cloud providers have one. It's a great way to go, and you can look at old bugs that were found, and you can kind of reverse engineer those bugs to understand what those security researchers did to find that bug. So we have a bug bounty program. So every product that we've launched, the entire world can come, we invite the entire world. Anyone in the world who wants to come and run penetration tests against us can. They sign up for an account with HackerOne, which is the organization we work with, and you start running tests against us. And if you find something and you bring it to us and it is an actual bug, we'll pay you for it. There's cash rewards for finding bugs in our solutions. This is Mark Litchfield. Mark is one of the top bug bounty hunters in the world. He actually doesn't have much of a day job. He makes a lot of money from these bug bounty programs. And he is constantly telling us how much he likes to work with us because we're receptive to his reports. We want these reports coming into us. We want Mark, we want his friends, we want everyone that he knows testing us because it only makes us stronger. So we've launched this, we've done our bug bounty program, and now Dropbox is live to the world, and now you're using it, right? And this is where our abuse prevention team comes in, right? Our abuse prevention team doesn't create secure architecture. They don't focus on securing our products. What our abuse prevention team does is they look at how people are using Dropbox, and they stop them from using Dropbox in a way that can cause harm to others. And they look at the users logging into Dropbox, and they make sure those users are who they say they are, and that we're protecting our users, the humans on Dropbox, from losing their data. We see a lot of people getting really creative around how they use Dropbox. We see people sending spam. We see people trying to host malware and send malware out using Dropbox as the repository for malware. We see attackers trying to come in, get access to an account, and then start to search for stuff that's valuable, like a Bitcoin wallet or some other type of data that could be used to steal someone's identity, right? We see a lot of stuff that we just never imagined. I don't know how people come up with this stuff. They really do have imaginations, and so we have to try and have kind of a similar. We have to think like those attackers to uncover what they might do. So I think the easiest way to explain what our abuse prevention team does is to walk you through a typical login session. So let's say you're logging into Dropbox, right? The first thing we'll do is we will look at the account that's logging in, and we actually monitor. We have a lot of threat intelligence around databases that have been stolen from other companies. This happens very frequently. So it happened at Dropbox in 2012. It's happened to almost every major provider out there, and it continues to happen to smaller companies that are out there. So we will monitor threat. We will look at there's different places that we get our threat intelligence from, and if we see a credential dump, we will work to get that credential dump, and we will then look and cross-compare every email address in that credential dump that's also associated with a Dropbox account. And if we find one, we will reset the password on that Dropbox account. And we do that so that an attacker cannot reuse that password and try and log into your Dropbox account. So the first thing we'll do is we'll see, was your account owned recently? Were you part of a recent credential dump, right? The second thing we'll do then is we'll ask, are you a human or are you a bot? Right? When someone's trying to attack Dropbox, they won't frequently try and do it themselves. They'll stand up a bunch of bots, and these bots will take these credential dumps, or they'll take other information they have, or they'll just start cycling through dictionaries to try and guess the password. And so if we see the login behavior, the host that's logging in acting like a bot, again, we'll take measures to block that. And I'm going to be a little bit cagey here on how on what I tell you, on how I reveal the technical details of some of this stuff. We want asymmetrical information is a good thing in abuse prevention, because if we talk about what we're looking for, the attackers can then use that information to circumvent our controls. So we have a lot of ways that we look at what a human is versus what a bot is, and we can with a high degree of confidence predict whether someone trying to log in is a bot or not. One of the things we have developed that I do like talking about is we developed fingerprints for our users. So when you type in a password on your keyboard, when you type on a keyboard in general, people have a different unique way of typing letters, right? The time it takes me to get from the R on my keyboard to the A on my keyboard is probably faster than many of you in this room because my name starts with an R and an A. I'm typing my name a lot, right? And also like the time that it takes to press that button down and up and then move. There's all sorts of there's a profile that we can build around our users and around how they interact with their keyboard and their mouse. And so that's one of the ways that we'll look, you know, okay, you're not a bot, you're another user, but are you who you say you are, right? And let's say I'm logging in, I look like a human at Dropbox, but I'm logging into an account that's not my own, and I'm typing in a password in a way that I've never typed it before. Oh, and by the way, I'm doing it from a region of the world that I've never been in before. And I'm on a host that's never connected to this Dropbox account before, right? We'll do all of these things to understand, is this human the human that they say they are? And this is all before you've logged in, right? This is all you've done is type in your password and hit enter, right? And once we validate that yes, this looks like the user who they say they are, then we will grant access. If it looks like it's a suspicious login, we'll either reset a password, send you an email, we'll do a number of things to kind of flag that. And then finally, you know, you've successfully authenticated, you're in Dropbox, you're using our service. What we do from there is, again, in an automated way, we look for suspicious actions. Users interact with a service typically in a similar way every time they log in. Most users are saving updates to files, they're maybe opening files that have already been on there, but they're interacting in a similar way, and then we can build a pattern from those interactions. If all of a sudden we see that something suspicious is occurring within a Dropbox account, and it's all automated, we don't actually go and look at these Dropbox accounts, we just build profiles and then match those profiles with what's actually happening. And if we see something suspicious happening, our abuse prevention team will get involved. They'll look at where the logins are coming from. They'll go back through every one of these 3 criteria and see if there's something there that's suspicious. And if we don't get to 100% confidence that this session should be authorized, we will kick the session out, we'll reset the password, and we'll contact the user. So that's what our abuse prevention team does, and they work really, really hard. There's, I think, something like 5,000 logins at a peak time. It might be over 5,000 logins a second occurring on Dropbox. So all of this has to happen really, really quickly. It has to be transparent to our users. You guys aren't going to sit around and wait for us to do all of this stuff while you log in. And it has to continue to scale as we bring in more and more users. So that's the kind of challenge that an engineer at Dropbox loves to focus on. One last thing I want to talk about, though, is our approach to privacy. And actually, I'm going to stop here before I talk about privacy. How many of you is anyone in this room reusing a password? It's okay, you're in good company if you are. I'm sure some people in here are reusing. If you're using the same password across different services, okay, a couple people raise your hands. I think some of you aren't raising your hands, but that's okay. There's 60% of internet users in the recent survey indicated that they are reusing passwords, and that means using the same password, and where it's important, if you're using the same username or email address for that service as well. This is an industry problem. It's an industry problem because this is, for most large cloud providers, we have hardened our infrastructure, we have hardened our services, we're monitoring for abuse. But the one thing we can't change is users reusing these passwords. And so what attackers will do is they'll, they will ignore the major providers because they know that we've invested a lot in security. And they will instead go and try and find what I call a mom and pop website, a website that's been stood up on a platform that isn't necessarily secure. They'll then go and what they will do is steal the credentials from that site. And because we are reusing passwords, all of a sudden all of your accounts are owned across all of those major sites. And this is why password reuse is the most common attack vector that we see at Dropbox. There's a couple of things that you can do, and if you take away anything from my discussion today, please take away this. Start using a password manager. Turn on 2-factor authentication for all of your sensitive services. If you don't do that, you will be a victim to this type of attack at some point. We all get phishing emails. Those emails are getting better and better at convincing us that they are the service they say they are. All it takes is one mistake on your part or bad engineering on the part of another provider, and your accounts will be owned. With a password manager, what you get to is basically, even if that account is owned, because you're using strong, unique passwords across all your websites and all your services, the one site getting owned will not result in all of your services being vulnerable. You also want to use 2FA, because if you're using 2FA, even if that first site got owned, the attackers couldn't use your credentials to log in there because they don't have your 2FA code. So if you do anything walking out of here today, please go start using a password manager and start using 2FA. We're going to talk about privacy as well, and I'm just going to finish up here now, and then we can go to the questions that you might have. Dropbox takes user privacy very seriously. We view security and privacy as going hand in hand. We will not do a good job of securing your data if someone can walk through our front door and just take it from us. We have a transparency report that we publish every year where we talk about the number of subpoenas we're receiving, the number of customers we were able to contact. We try and be very, very transparent around what's going on with government requests for access to your data. The EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, did a survey back in 2015. It's called the Who's Got Your Back survey. That's the last time they looked at Dropbox in our industry. We got 5 out of 5 stars. I don't think there were many other providers that did. And that was just an assessment of how well how hard we work to maintain your privacy and to make sure you have control of your data. And so that's basically it. I hope that was interesting. I'm ready for some, I think we're doing Q&A now. Is that right? Hopefully there's some good questions. Ask away, ask about anything. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. All right, any questions? No? Anything at all security related? Okay, we have one over here.
So I agree with you in regards to using password managers, but that's just setting a new target for people to go hack next. How do you feel the timeline will be until that's the next target?
Sure. So you have to be very careful about the password manager you use, right? There's some password managers that host their data themselves, and there's some that allow you to host your data wherever you want to. That being said, there's been a lot of progress made in encrypting passwords and encrypting data, right? At Dropbox, we use bcrypt with a per user salt, and then a global pepper. And this means that if you were able to get access to that user table today, the likelihood that you would be able to decrypt the passwords in there is not very high, right? At least not now. Computers keep getting faster, technology keeps changing, and what was considered good password hygiene 5 years ago wouldn't be considered good now, because things can be cracked much more quickly. So we'll keep evolving. So you want to look at the password manager that you're using. I had 1Password up there before. The reason I like 1Password is they let you store your 1Password database within your Dropbox account. And so to get to that database, you'd have to get into someone's Dropbox account either through credential reuse, but if you have 2FA turned on, that's going to be very hard to do. Or you'd have to attack Dropbox and get in that way, right? So you can look, it's not a bulletproof solution. Very little of security is, but your risk is reduced by using a password manager. So yeah, fair question though. Any other questions?
Yeah. So let's say Dropbox detects that somebody logged in and the patterns didn't match, all of that. So basically at this point you're suspecting a compromise. Do you share any of that information, for example, with Facebook and other accounts, which may also, like a domino fall victim because the attacker managed to guess the password of Dropbox?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the tech industry in the security part of the tech industry is actually a very close group of people, and we talk all the time. And we have groups that have been set up where we do share information like that. We will share information on new attacks that we're seeing. We will share information on the accounts that we think are there's a number of attacks that we worry about, right? The first is nation-state attacks. So these are attacks by governments going after specific individuals. Second is state-sponsored attacks. They're like nation-state attacks, except they're typically done by organizations that are funded or supported by a government agency. And then there are just what I call the criminals, right? People who want to go make money off of attacks. And then the last group, the fourth group, are the chaos monkeys. These are the people that come in and attack for the fun of it, right? They want to create some chaos. They're actually the hardest group to protect against. They're the most random. They are the ones that don't really have a goal in mind other than disrupting something, right? For those attacks, for the chaos monkeys and for the cyber criminals, it's much easier to identify patterns and trends. For the state-sponsored attacks and for the nation-state attacks, it's actually much harder because they are so targeted. And we have to be very careful, Dropbox has to be very careful about sharing information about the accounts. So we can say we're seeing this attack, but we can't say it's attacking this account, right? That would be a violation of the user's privacy. So we do share information. We have to be very careful about the information we share, and most of the information we share is about the attack vectors that we're seeing, where they're coming from, things like that.
I know that some, like I have where they use a security key, where you have to log in with your password or your username, and then
the actual hardware device that you, like a dongle, will like give you a random, seemingly random number that you punch in right there, and that expires after a certain period of time. Those tools can also be accessed on like a mobile phone, so if you download their app and all of that. How secure are those actually? Like, because I have heard that some government entities have used those, so I'm just curious on like whether companies like Dropbox might start implementing this, since they are accessible through mobile apps. It's not like you have to go buy an actual piece of hardware to access them.
Yeah, it comes down to the security of the seed for that token, right? And it's tough to answer that broadly because it comes down to how the seed is protected, and that varies from solution to solution. So we use YubiKeys, right? We use the hardware-based token. I consider that to be more secure than any software-based token, and I think you'll back me up on this, right? Hardware tokens are, I think, the most secure option at this point. If you can do that, you should do that. But they're also not as convenient, right? If you don't have your hardware token on you, you're locked out. That being said, again, you have to just pay attention to the provider that you're using, right? There's a number of providers out there who do this the right way. 1Password, I had them up there earlier, I'll keep going back to them. They allow you to replicate your seed across your apps, right? But again, the seed is being stored in my Dropbox account, right? 1Password doesn't actually have access to it outside of the application. If you're using a service that stores your information on their services or in the cloud somewhere, you want to do a really good job of vetting their security and making sure that they're not going to be the source of that leak.
I think they normally use a one-time pad for that, which is unbreakable theoretically. To answer the one-time pad, Wikipedia will give you everything you want to know. My question is in respect to the user-generated behavior pattern. What generates that?
So there's a couple of things that go into that, and I can't go too deep into this. But during, so is your question how we do it, or? Yeah,
is it a turnkey solution, or is it a built-in? Is there an engineer in-house that designed it? Is it all
yeah, so it's a combination. There are services out there that especially sit at login sessions that monitor for, and that's specifically around like monitoring for a bot versus a human. There's a lot of off-the-shelf